Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 40 of Not the Worsted Knitting Podcast. My name is Michelle, and I am the knitter and knitwear designer behind meeshyfrazz Knits. I am back today from the holidays. I think today is January 2nd. I've been on vacation, so I don't even really know what the day is. But I took last week off just to really enjoy the holiday. And so our vacation is wrapping up. We just have a couple of days left, but it's been really, really nice. I hope you guys have all had a really wonderful holiday and a really nice new year. In today's episode, I probably don't have a ton of things to talk about today, but I do have a few things. And it's mostly kind of what I wrapped up for the new year and talking about what will be coming soon. In terms of like works in progress, I don't actually have much to show just because I really just took some time off. And it's just been really great. We've done some things around the house, which I'll be talking about. And it's just nice to, not really have anything planned and anything to do. And we just kind of went with what we felt like doing. And now things are kind of getting back. So I guess we will start by chatting about what I'm wearing. I finished my Lyon Sweater by Petite knit, which is so exciting. I'm gonna sit up so you can see it in all of its glory. I love this sweater. It came out exactly as I was hoping. This sweater is by Petite knit. It is $7.28 on Ravelry. And this is a really interesting construction. It is a top-down sweater. You start by shaping out the back yoke, and then you pick up stitches to build out the shoulders, and you pick up stitches for the sleeves. And then you start knitting up the front, you join it in the round, and then you do a series of raglan increases, and then you just kind of knit it all like a typical top-down sweater. And that gives you a really nice, sorry Bagel, I just accidentally swiped Bagel. But it gives you a really nice shoulder detail here. And then, let me see. Yeah, you should be able to see the back shoulder detail as well. I think it gives you a really nice fit. Now, and I will say, as is Petite Knit's current style right now, everything is pretty oversized. So you can see the armhole depth is still a little bit long, and there's still a little bit of excess here. It's meant to have about 7 to 8 inches, I believe, of positive ease, which is about where mine hits. I have a 34-inch bust, and I knit the size 1, and I believe I'm sitting at about 7 to 8 inches of positive ease. So oversized, roomy. I made a point to make my sleeves a little bit extra long. It was funny knitting on this because sometimes when I would try it on, the sleeves were like here, and then other times I'd try it on and the sleeves were here. So I had to try this on multiple times to make sure the sleeves would be how I wanted, but let me sit up again. Yeah, they sit basically where I can kind of grab them underneath, which I really like. Since I was going for a really cozy fit, I wanted this to kind of be big, oversized, cozy, something I'm gonna wear when it's really cold and I just want to bundle up. And so I made them a little longer than suggested. The only other modification I made was that, so you do a series of just normal decreases to a certain point and then you adjust for length. I decided that near the end, right before I started the cuff, I did a semi-rapid decrease. Now, it wasn't a major decrease. For my size, I believe you ended with about 60 stitches. And I wanted to cinch in that cuff just a little bit. So I did one round where I did every 10 stitches, there would be a decrease. And that allowed me to just cinch it in just enough to, I wouldn't say it's a balloon sleeve because it's a very minor decrease, but it just cinched it in enough so that in the combination with shrinking down the needle size for the cuff and doing ribbing, it gives me a nice fit that's still a little bit, I'm trying to show this, it's kind of weird, still has a little bit of excess, but it's not a ton. Like what's the other one? I think the Monday sweater I did by Petite knit, I knit that to pattern in terms of the sleeve fit. And those sleeves are a little bit wide for me. I don't mind it for that sweater. Like I'm not gonna adjust it because it's not enough to bother me, but I do typically like my cuffs to be a little bit tapered in so they're not huge. Also, I do have kind of thin wrists, so that's probably part of why. But this fits me really, really great. It's exactly as I hoped. Really oversized. I actually really love the collar fit. Like I just think it fits really nicely around my neck in a really nice way. There is one other modification I did, but it's like minor. In most petite knit patterns, if you're doing a folded over neckband, about halfway through, she will actually have you slip some stitches. So you're doing almost like when you're setting up for like a tubular bind off sort of thing, where I think you knit one and then you slip one to make it fold over a little bit easier and give it a little bit of a thinner look. I don't do that just because personally, I don't love the way that looks, and I feel like it's almost more obvious. I don't know. I don't mind it as is, so I just knit and purled the entire way across and then, you know, did the bind off, because the collar is the last thing you do. And I just think that looks really good. It's really clean. And so I finished this literally New Year's Eve evening. I picked up the collar stitches that morning. And so I was able to get this finished in 2024, like just under the wire. And I got it blocking that evening just before midnight, which was great. So, and it actually, fortunately, it just dried. So this is a worsted weight sweater and it's pretty thick. And so it needed like a day and a half to dry, even with me rolling it in a couple of towels and then putting it on my like Pringle drying mat. It's just, you know, it's a lot of fabric, so it needed some extra time to dry. And then also it doesn't help that I keep I'm calling it a Pringle, but it's that Cocoa Knits rounded drying mat thing. I keep that on my desk, and Tuna likes to lay on it sometimes, which I think slows down the drying process just a little bit. Or maybe, who knows, maybe he's helping to soak up some of the moisture. I don't know. So it took a couple of days, but it finished just in time for me to film this, which is so exciting. I'm really happy to have this done. This is actually, I think this is the first red sweater I've knit, which I don't know why I've never knit a red sweater before. I'm really happy with it. And I don't think I mentioned yet, I know if you've watched my other videos, you're already familiar, but this yarn is, so the main red yarn is Newburgh Yarn Co. Hudson DK, and the color is Coleman Red. And then I held it with a much darker yarn, which is the Fyberspates Cumulus, which is a Surrey alpaca, and that is in the color Ruby Red. And together, it gave this beautiful marled effect. Like you can really see so the Newburgh yarn, you can see it's more of that like fire engine red, and then the Surrey is a much deeper red, and together it's just, it just made such a beautiful fabric. Like I'm just really thrilled with how this came out, and I'm really happy with it. And I love the shoulder detail. I love the sleeve fit. So I'm glad I was able to get this done in time for the new year. And yeah, so that is what I'm wearing. That's my main finished object. And I'll chat a little bit about my finished holiday whips, which I just realized I left upstairs, so I'm gonna go get those. Okay, back with my finished items from the holiday. If you've been watching me, then these are not new to you, but I figured I would just show them off now that they are totally done. My Advent project for December of 2024, this was the Siroc Socks, which I did with the Tiny Human Knits Nutcracker collection self-striping sock yarn. And so I just followed the pattern exactly for a size 2. And I used her contrast color for the cuff and the heel, which is a shadow wrap heel. I debated doing the same for the toe, but where it ended up for my length, it was actually about halfway through this blue stripe. And I wasn't sure how I felt about cutting the stripe halfway to add the light gold. So I decided to just stripe it all the way down the foot. And I'm back and forth on if that was the right decision. I mean, I don't mind it as is. I think it looks great. It's really fun. I think it's just the fact that it ended on the red, which kind of makes it look like a target. It's funny when I wear these socks, it kind of looks like my feet have a tongue. But overall, I mean, I think it's really fun. I think I'm glad still that I did stripes all the way down, just because the yarn is gorgeous. This Nutcracker collection yarn, I think this might be my favorite holiday yarn that I've ever purchased. It's got those really beautiful vintage Christmas vibes, and these socks are just a dream. The yarn is gorgeous, and I've worn them once, I think, so far. I don't know if I'm just gonna wear them around the holidays because I like them so much. I might just wear them year round. I don't know, we'll see. I'm such a sucker for wearing my socks year round. I will say, I didn't even mention, but I'm gonna do this. Okay, how do I do this? My Trim the Tree socks are having their last hurrah today. I do think I'm gonna put them away for a little bit just because they are very holiday, but I don't know. I'm actually thinking I might make another pair of Trim the Tree socks in like pastel-y colors to wear for Easter or something, or springtime. I don't know, just because they're really fun. So we'll see. Anyway, back to my finished objects. So yeah, I finished these Siroc socks on Christmas Eve, I think. I think I finished them Christmas Eve. That's when I did the toes for these. And so it was actually really nice to have these as my Advent, not Advent project, just doing a stripe a day, i.e. a pattern repeat a day. And just really happy with how these came out. So those are done. And then the burning question that I got over and over again, which was so fun, everybody wanted to know how Thomas's socks went over. If you have watched previously, you will know I made him pizza socks. They're pizza and breadstick socks. And you may be able to notice, I'm not sure, but these have already gotten quite a bit of love, and I actually just washed them again. Thomas loved these. He actually was very surprised, which is great. I guess the thing is, I always have so much knitting around, and I've got charts around. So even though he did glance at the chart when I was working on this, I don't think he really registered what it was. So when he saw these as socks, he was just like, "You made me pizza socks, oh my God." But he was really excited for these, which made me really excited. He wore them right away, and he wore them like 3 days in a row. Which, sorry, I hope that doesn't embarrass you, Thomas, if you're watching this. But no, he's worn these a bunch, and so I already had to wash them again so he can wear them, because he wants to wear them again before his vacation is over. And so I'm just so happy that he was happy with them. And he actually said that this was the best fitting socks that I've made, which is interesting because I was actually nervous that these were going to be a little on the large side for him. But it's interesting how everybody has a different preference for how they like their socks. He was saying that the foot is a little bit looser than his other ones, and he actually liked the fact that he had a little bit of room to kind of wear these as more like slipper socks. So that's something I'm going to keep in mind for the future, that I might stay a little bit on the slightly oversized fit for him. I'm always worried about them being too loose and like falling down, but I think the fact that there's color work on the cuff, it really helps to keep everything in place. So these went over just really well. The yarn for this, I used Hazel Knit's Artisan sock, and it was just a bunch of different scraps that I had lying around from other projects I've worked on. He also mentioned that he absolutely loved the way it felt, so I think in the future I will probably knit him more socks using the Hazel Knit's Artisan sock. I think it's because it's a little bit of a woolier base. So the Artisan sock base, I believe, is a 90% superwash merino and then 10% nylon. And I think he really likes that woolier feel. And that's great too, because I think because there's a little bit more wool in it, I think he'll get a little bit more of that. They'll kind of form to his feet even more so than something with a little more nylon, I think, just over time. So just thrilled all around that these were such a hit and that they fit him. There's always that really terrifying moment when they go to put the sock on and you're like, please fit, please like go over the heel. And they did. So yeah, just so glad these went over well. So we actually also wore these on Christmas. Well, he wore these on Christmas, and then I wore my Trim the Tree socks, and I took a photo of that I shared on Instagram. I'll pop it up here so you can see. But it was really fun for us to both wear our holiday socks, even though these aren't exactly holiday socks. They were his holiday gift, so it counts. So yeah, lots of socks that have been done, and that's kind of all I have to show in terms of anything I finished. I actually did finish another pair of socks. It is the summer pattern that I'm working on that I cannot talk about, but I finished that, and I did a couple of different versions, which I'm really excited about. I really can't talk about it at all, but there's one that I got really excited about, and the colors that I used were really fun, so I'm glad to have that done and see that finished. The other funny thing about having some time off, where I purposely just took time off, took a break, didn't do any work of any kind, is that I feel like right now I am overflowing with ideas and things I want to make, and it's kind of weird. I'm in this kind of like almost spinning my wheels phase right now, where I'm sketching out a lot of ideas and I'm starting to swatch things, and I have a lot of things in almost mode. Nothing is ready to kind of like, you know, get started right away on, but I know I'm close with a lot of ideas, so I'm excited to see what's coming over the next few weeks for myself. It's funny sometimes, at least for my creative process, I'll have something that inspires me, and it's like it'll get stuck in my brain to where I have to get it out. Like, it's just once I think of something, I need to see it through, I need to see it done, and I don't always know how it's going to end up. Like the Trim the Tree socks, for example, they are Christmas light socks, but my initial idea when I was designing those socks was I wanted Christmas ornament socks. And I just sketched a whole bunch of things until I actually did the lights, and that was what I ran with because that's what I really liked and was responding to. So it'll always start as one thing and then it evolves into something else. So I'm curious to see where these next couple of ideas go. I have a top that I am ideating on right now. I'm doing swatches for, and it's slated to come out in July. It's a project I'm doing for Blue Sky Fibers, and that's something I will be able to share. So I will probably start sharing some swatches in my process for that. Being that it's coming out in July, I'm debating whether I want it to be more of a summer top or a transitional fall top. And with the yarn that I'm using, I'm thinking it's probably going to be more transitional fall. But I still think I want it to be sort of lacy. So I'm just still playing around with that. There's this motif that is in my mind, and I've swatched it a couple of different ways, and it's not there yet, but it's close. And I just did a new chart that I'm going to be swatching out next. So maybe that's something I will chat about in a future episode. It's funny, I almost don't know if I should show this because I technically have a whip to show, except I'm going to rip it out and redo. But the other thing I'm playing around with is just this tiny little sock that is not really amounting to much right now. Last year I bought this salty blonde fiber, I think the yarn color is called Apollo, and it's just this really crazy beautiful variegated yarn. I bought it right after the auroras were, I don't know if it was something that you were able to view, but at least for us in Western Washington, we were able to see the auroras pretty well. It was the first time I had ever actually seen them in my life, and so it was such a big deal and such a momentous occasion that I saw this yarn and it reminded me of the Aurora Borealis, and I just had to buy it. And it has been sitting in my stash for months now, and every time I look in my stash and I see this, I'm like, you need to become something. And I'm almost there with an idea, but it's not quite there yet. So it will probably have a contrast of this very light beigey gray. I would say this is like a grayish, And this, at least for now, what I'm using is, this is Cascade, the Cascade sock yarn, and I think the color is Sandstone. It is the color that I used for the Viking socks. And so I've been sketching some ideas. I knit this guy up last night, and it was just a little bit, there's too much negative space in the motif for this yarn. So I've got another idea that I'm sketching out that I'm working on, and so we're gonna see where that goes. But it's very up in the air. So it's totally idea swatching phase right now. The nice thing, I actually like to swatch with a sock because it's not much more knitting than doing a normal swatch, and then you can easily see it knit up in the round. And that way, if there's a motif that I like enough, then I can see it through on larger items as well. But I can at least start it with a sock, and then I have fun socks to wear as well. So that's the only thing I can show you in terms of works in progress. But there will be more to come for sure. In terms of what is coming up, I still need to do my everything I knit in 2024 video because, you know, that's, of course I do. I have to do the roundup and see everything I worked on. So that's probably something I will do next week. My big thing is I really wanted to get this done by the end of the year. It's funny, I don't know why we sometimes set these crazy goals for ourselves. Like, there was no need for me to have this done before 2025. There was no need. There was no schedule on this. This was just a leisure knit for myself for fun. But there's just something about wrapping it up at the end of the year that feels really good. And so now that I've finished this, I feel like I can properly do my everything I knit in 2025 video, or 2024, I'm getting ahead of myself. So that will probably be the next video I do. The other thing that I have going on, which is exciting, is we are actually, what we've been doing for the last couple of days since the new year is we're moving some things around the house. Nothing major, but my office space has been kind of sad for a while. It's been feeling very overfull, and the lighting isn't very good, and I want to go in there and feel inspired and feel creative, and I found myself not wanting to work in there. And so finally we just decided, like, let's just move some things around. Let's move out some furniture, get some new furniture that fits the space better. And so it's gonna feel much more like a proper studio now, which I'm really, really excited to get set up. I had this sort of hand-me-down display case, which is a beautiful display case that had lighting in it. And that's what I've been using for my yarn stash. But it wasn't working the best for me just because there were only, the way it was set up, it was very deep shelves, and there were 4 of them. And what was ending up happening was I was just kind of stacking the yarn all over itself into a pile, and it was falling, and then like having to try and organize the skeins versus what I've already wound up. It was becoming a little bit unorganized, and I was debating getting more baskets and things. On top of that, it was the whole unit, the display case it's all black with glass doors, and the inside was all black too. And I felt like it was really dark in my office, which my office is pretty small. So I try to keep the furniture light and bright so it doesn't feel like a cave in there. And on top of that, I felt like you couldn't actually see a lot of the yarn, especially the darker colors, because, you know, the light is just being pulled in. It's not bouncing off of the surface at all. So I spent a lot of time, I bought this like white marble contact paper only because it was the only white contact paper I could find. And I like lined the entire inside of the shelf, which took me hours. Like I cut around the hinges and everything, and I did a pretty good job, and that helped. But it still felt really dark on the outside, and it was something I was willing to live with. But Thomas finally mentioned, he was like, you know, I will take that. Why don't we get you the shelves that you actually want, and I'll take this. So Thomas, he plays this tabletop game called Warhammer. And part of that requires you to build and paint mini figurines. And so he's got a bunch of them now, and he was actually kind of running out of space for him to be able to display them. And so we decided, like, why don't you take this display case? You can use that. There are already some glass shelves in there that you can add for extra storage. And I will go ahead and get the display cases that I actually want for my space. And so that is what we're doing. So yesterday we actually moved my display case, which was anchored into the wall. We had to take all that out, pull it downstairs, which was interesting because it was not a light piece of furniture. And we got that set up in his space. And so his space is all set up now, and it's looking really good. And so my office is currently absolute chaos. And I was thinking that I might actually film some of this process. Like, I took some before photos in like sort of a chaotic but okay state so you could see how it was. And I figured I might film some of the process of us getting it where I want it to be, or at least I'll chat a little bit about that because I'm just excited to be able to organize this space in the way that I've always wanted to. So that's really exciting. And basically what that means is right now, my office, I have display cases coming hopefully in the next couple of days. So they should be, I ordered them from IKEA. So I think it's like the Billy Oxberg display cases. I'm sure so many people have these. It's not an unusual thing, but they're all white with glass doors. And then I got some lights that will go on top and hang down to hopefully light up the yarn and help light up the space. And those are gonna go on the wall where that display case was. And then I'm moving some furniture around. So the other thing too is right now I have a standing desk in my office as well as an L desk where I do most of my more crafty related things. And because of that, like I said, my office is not very big. And so everything is just kind of pushed up against the walls and it feels very cluttered. And so we're actually also going to be rearranging the guest bedroom a little bit to move the standing desk in there. So that'll be more like the standing desk office situation. And then my current office is going to be more of the like creative studio space where I can actually pull out my sewing machine and hopefully keep that out on the desk, keep my winding station set up, and then have a place where I can just sit and knit or like focus on if there's something I'm really trying to dive into. And I think this is going to be really, really good for the space and for me creatively. So that should be really fun. And that's probably a video or a couple videos that I will have upcoming. So that is what you can expect from me over the next few weeks, hopefully. I also have a super fun rug that I ordered, which I thought was coming today, and I realized I read it wrong and it's not coming until next week. So it'll be a couple weeks before my space is fully set up, but I hope that by this time next week, it should be just about done. So that is great. All right, I do have some fun sort of nitty chat to talk about, which is basically acquisitions. And that's actually mostly just Christmas gifts that I got that I thought would be really fun to share. So most of them were from Thomas. And so I'll start with some of the fun things he got me. So what I don't have to show, because I'll probably show it in future episodes, he got me a couple of really cute knitting shirts with just like little fun sayings on them. And then he got me a couple of knitting books that I've been looking at. And then some of the other fun little trinkets he got me. He saw these little cat stitch markers on Etsy, and they have little tails that move. And there's a whole bunch of them on here, and they're all different types of cats. And he got me a couple of these. So I actually have a ton of these cat stitch markers now. Like I said, these are just from Etsy, and they're adorable, and they have like the little lobster clasp things on them. So it makes them super easy. These are my favorite type of stitch marker because they're not as big as the light bulb stitch markers. They don't get stuck and caught as easily, but you can open and close them. So if you decide at some point you don't want a stitch marker there anymore, it's not a big deal. So I'm really excited about these, and I actually used them a little bit on this sweater before I was done with it. And And then another fun thing that I asked for was he got me a couple of these little organizational cases. These are little storage cases that were also on Etsy. I have one that's kind of my main stitch marker case. It also has needles and a few other little notions. And what happens is I end up moving that from bag to bag, and I typically have multiple projects going at one time. So I'm always either carrying my main bag and another little bag with me, or I'm just having to be cognizant of always making sure that's in my project bag that I'm using at the time. So I thought it would be nice to actually just have a couple that I could have in different bags and just put a few stitch markers in each one. That way, no matter where I am and what bag I have what I need to work on. And so these are really nice, and I'm really happy to have a couple more of these on hand. And then one of the bigger items that he got me, it was also something I requested, and that is the Luca DPN set it's the small needle sizes. I think you say it Luca. And so this is what it looks like inside. This is the double pointed needles. And I don't know what the size range is offhand, but I will put it on the screen. There is the smaller set and then the larger set. And honestly, I think this basically ends at the size range that I typically work at anyway. I don't do a lot of projects on large needles. I typically stay within the smaller size range. So this is actually perfect for me. And I typically have one set of DPNs that I use for my socks, but whenever I need DPNs for anything else, it's always kind of a struggle because it's just something that I buy, through the years I have bought DPNs in just like the one size I needed for the project, because I try to avoid using DPNs if at all possible because they're such a pain to work with. But for small circumference things, especially like the heel the toe of a sock or the end of a heel, if I'm doing an afterthought heel, I will always use DPNs for. And anything where you're closing up, especially like hats, the very top of a hat, I will use DPNs for. So instead of having all of these different sets of DPNs, I thought it would actually be nice to have them all in one place. And so that is why I wanted this guy, and that's why I'm really happy to have this. I'm just trying really hard to get organized this year, and this is a good way to kind of get started with that. So it's a really nice case. Also, these needles are really light. Like, it feels actually like it's empty. I had to double check when I opened it to make sure there were actually needles in here, but they're just light. I really love the aesthetic of this brand and all of their needles. When the I don't know, are they called the Driftwood set? I'm not entirely sure, but when they put out that pink set of the interchangeable circular needles, I thought really hard about getting them. I was really close to buying them, but I had a couple of hesitations. One, I love my ChowGoos. The cables on those are just so good, and I think they're unmatched. And then I just really like working with stainless steel needles. I like the metal. I like the way that my stitches just glide more quickly. I don't love how sticky the wooden needles can be. I just feel like it slows me down, especially when I'm working with something like Surrey, something that's kind of toothy. But with that in mind, I actually really like to use wooden DPNs for that same reason. So anytime I've used metal DPNs, especially on small stitches like on a sock, if I move that project at all, those needles just slide right out, and it's just annoying to always have to be aware of that, making sure the needles aren't sliding out, the needles being so heavy. I just really don't like that. The wood needles, I don't have a problem with that. They're stickier, so they really grip onto the yarn, and they're a little bit lighter weight. So I think they're really good for DPNs. So I have a set of the US 1 2.25 millimeter Luca DPNs that I typically use for my socks. And so I'm glad to have the small range now all in this little carry case. So this was a really great gift. And then there's one other gift that I got, which I thought was really fun, and this was from my friend. I believe she got herself one too. And this is the My Year in Yarn 2025 journal. It's like a bullet journal, And it's not just for knitting, it's for, I think it's all fiber arts, specifically like knitters and crocheters. And this is by Summer Day Crochet. So if you're on Instagram, you've probably seen this. I've seen a lot of ads for this over the last few weeks. Obviously, it's a really great Christmas gift. And what I like about it, it's got your, you've got like a vision board for the year, and then you've got a calendar in the year. So each month you kind of have an overview of the month, what projects you kind of plan to work on, your to-do list, your to-buy list, all of that stuff. You can set goals. After that, you've got like lists and inventories. So here you can track your works in progress. And then you've got like yarn stash inventory, project inventory, gift inventory, supply wish list, all of that stuff. And then I think the main thing that I will be using is this guy, which is the completed project log. And here you just write all the details about the project you worked on, any notes you want to take. And I think that is really nice. You can also rate it. And there's a ton of pages for these. So room for plenty of projects throughout the year. And then at the back, you've got a notes section where you've got a dotted page and a lined page. So you can write notes, maybe you can sketch something, sketch some ideas. And I just thought this was a really nice, really thoughtful gift. I have many a journal, and I'm sure I'm not alone in this, that, you know, I always start my year wanting to journal every day and stay on top of it. And you know, sometimes life just gets in the way, and then it's been months and then you haven't logged it in a while. I had sort of made a bullet journal type thing like this for myself that I kept up for a while and was really happy with. But the problem was that it was a totally blank journal where I had to do all the art for the headlines and the boxes for where I would write the different things. And over time, just the amount of work that was involved in me having to do that meant that I didn't reach for it because I knew I'd have to draw so much before I could even log my actual projects. So the fact that it's all there for me and all I have to do is actually write my notes, I suspect that I will use this more often, and so that I'm looking forward to, and hopefully that will be the case. Hopefully I will keep up with this throughout the year. I'm going to look at it much like, you know, the retrospective at the end of a project like I would do on Ravelry, which sometimes I'm good at, sometimes I'm not so good. We've all been there, it's okay. But I'm really looking forward to having this because I love to look back on these. You know, I've got a ton of notebooks that I use for different things. I mean, I have one sitting right here that I use for my show notes. And then I have another one that I use when I'm sketching out ideas for my designs and even writing up my notes for when I'm working on the pattern, which I will also use in tandem with my notes app on my phone, which I will then bring in to my laptop so I can take some of those notes. So I'm kind of scattered. I use a lot of different things, and I'm always trying to kind of like better organize my workflow. And so I'm hoping that I can kind of keep this guy on my desk as a little retrospective, and maybe by the end of the year, I'll have a book full of my, my process throughout the year. So I might try to share this as I work on it, but you know, we'll see. No, I'm not gonna hold myself too accountable for that, so it's okay. But this, I thought this was a really special gift, and I'm really looking forward to working on that. So that covers all of my actual like knitting chat for today. The only thing I have left to talk about is my book chat, which I'll share a little bit about the last couple of books I read, and then like a slight book retrospective for the year. I don't know. So when I last was chatting with you guys, I was still reading One Perfect Couple by Ruth Ware. And that is the story about a virologist in London who is dating a struggling actor. They're kind of struggling in their relationship, and he finds his like last big break possibility when he gets a call about a like a reality game show competition dating show. And the catch is that you have to go there with your significant other. You have to be part of a couple to go. And so she reluctantly agrees to just try and placate him because she's in a weird place in her career anyway. And there's a ton of red flags for the show, but they decide to join anyway because they're both kind of desperate to make this work. And so they go on the show, which they have to travel overseas for, and a major disaster happens. And from that point, you start to kind of read from a perspective of, you're reading a log that somebody wrote. So you're reading in the future of what happened, and you're kind of going backwards to that event while you're following the characters, you're following them while it happens. So you're kind of going backward and forward until you catch up in the middle. And what's fun about that is that as you progress a little bit further, the log starts to not really match what's actually happening, and you're trying to understand why and who's maybe more suspect. And I really enjoyed that aspect of the book. I thought it was fun to you start to break down each of the characters, and you have people that you think are probably suspect, but then there's a couple that you're not quite sure about. So I thought it was an enjoyable read. I thought it was fun. I thought it wrapped up well at the end, and I thought it did a pretty good job of, ending on a note that I felt pretty good about. So I enjoyed the book. It was a pretty quick read, and it's definitely something I would recommend if that's sort of like a fun genre if that's something that you enjoy. So the next book I read, which I finished, I think New Year's Eve, or maybe the night before New Year's Eve is when I finished it, and that is The House in the Pines by Anna Reyes. I did not like this book, and I will not recommend this book. This was another one, I went in blind. It was late, I needed another book to read, and this was available on Libby, so I picked it. I actually debated returning this early a couple of times, except that I'm really stubborn, and if I can, I always try to finish a book because I'm hoping that it will, sort itself out. In retrospect, I should have just returned this book early. The premise is you have a protagonist who is struggling mentally. Her best friend passed away unexpectedly like 7 years prior, and it was an unexplained death. She just passed away with no reason at all, just like fell over. And she was in the presence of the protagonist's boyfriend, who she has suspected this whole time of being guilty of murdering her, but there is no proof. When she tried to tell people that, everybody thought she was crazy. She ended up seeking therapy and went on medication, so this whole time she's heavily medicated now, and it makes her an even less reliable source. So at the time that you meet her, another death happens in a very similar situation around the same man. And so it starts with her going back to this place to try and uncover how he's doing it so she can prove that he's at fault. And during that time, you have a lot of flashbacks. What's difficult about this book is that I felt like it felt a little erratic to read, because there was no regular cadence to when you're flashing forward versus flashing back, and it's all the same characters. So you'll be reading about the same characters in the present time, and then the next chapter, it's the same set of characters, but you're actually back 7 years, but there's no indicator that you have gone back. And it's not always every chapter. Sometimes you read a few chapters in the same time period, and then it switches. So it takes you a couple of pages to figure out what time period you're in, or what setting you're in, and that's a little bit jarring. And then on top of that, I don't know if there was really any payoff. Eventually you find out what happened, and you're just kind of like, oh, okay, all right, sure, maybe, yeah, okay, I don't know, maybe that's possible. And then on top of that, once you finally find out like how it happened, there's really no conclusion to that side of the story. Like, none of that gets wrapped up, but then it kind of ends on like a happy note, all is well, time to move on, except that none of that gets wrapped up, even though most of the book is about trying to prove all of this. So by the end of it, I felt very much like it was almost open-ended, like she wanted to maybe write another book, but even if she does, I'm not going to read it. So that is not one that I will recommend. And it was interesting. One of the reasons, this was just one that was available, but it had been on my mind because I had seen this book recommended based on another book that I had read that I loved. And so that is what I'm gonna get into next. What I want to chat about next is basically my favorite book of the year and then a special mention book. So my favorite book of the year was Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. This book I thought was just such a hit for me this year because I really didn't know what to expect when I started it, and it took me on such a journey, such an unexpected ride. And I love that when a book just completely surprises me and I don't know what to expect, and all of the people you think are the usual suspects are not the ones, and everything you think gets turned on its head. I just love that. I think sometimes I can be a bit of a cynical reader, like, oh, well, obviously this is the guy. And this broke all of that. It kind of, there's like a time travel aspect, sort of Groundhog Day-ish, but not quite. And it's a thriller, and there's like sort of a mystery, but you're trying to stop an event before it happens, sort of thing. And you just uncover all of these pieces along the way, and it's just such a fun read, and I so recommend that. So that is my absolute favorite book of the year. I could even see myself rereading this book in another year or two. And then my special mention is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This was another one where I actually was recommended to read this book by a few people, and then finally it came available on my queue. And I feel like this is just one of those books that I just read in like 2 days because I just couldn't stop reading it. It wasn't anything crazy where there were like major cliffhangers where I just had to keep going, but it was just such an interesting story that was so well written that I just wanted to keep reading it. Like, this was just it was just great storytelling, I think. And the story basically follows, it's talking about an aging Hollywood starlet who, her prime was in the 1950s. That's when she kind of became this bombshell in Hollywood. And you're following her as an older woman, and she has found this woman that she wants to tell her biography, tell her story. And so you're hearing it through her retelling her story. And there are a lot of problems. Like, there's a lot of bad things that happen to her, and there's a lot of bad things that she does. But what I found so interesting is kind of the understanding of this is what was required of her to do in order to gain that level of fame and success, especially in a time period that was so heavily dominated by men and by women not really having a place of power or a real seat at the table of decision making, especially in an industry like Hollywood that still struggles with that today. And it makes you think about things a little bit differently of like, well, yeah, she could have said no and then faded into the background, but this is what she had to do to become that, for better or worse. And on top of that, you're trying to also figure out her connection to this woman who is going to be writing her biography. Why did she pick her? What is their connection? And you find that out at the end. And it also ends on a really interesting note. I find this book so interesting because it covers a lot of really controversial topics throughout, and then it ends on a very controversial note, which I found I really enjoyed it, and I feel like it's such a great conversation starter because you can see both sides, you can see both perspectives, and see why somebody would be in the right to think that, but why also it could be thought of as not right. I just really enjoy being able to see both sides of something that's kind of problematic and see the perspectives there. So it's just a really thought-provoking story, and I really enjoyed it. And so that is why that one gets a special mention for me in the year. But yeah, so that kind of does it. That's it for my book chat. Those were my favorite books of the year. I'm sure I will have many new ones in the upcoming year to chat about. I've got another one on the list that I haven't started yet, so hopefully I will start that tonight. But yeah, that kind of does it. So if you have watched until now, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being a part of this journey with me. It's been so great to do this whole thing, to be on YouTube. This time last year, I really didn't think I I would do any of this. And honestly, Thomas kind of pushed me to do it and convinced me that I would have a good time doing this. He really, like, I've watched podcasts for years and years, and he would always say, you know, why don't you do that? You have so much to say. And I'm like, but nobody wants to hear me talk about this. But even what I realized is that even if there's nobody listening, I clearly have plenty to talk about. And this has just been such a fun place for me to kind of, it's like a video journal of my own life throughout the year. And so I'm looking forward to continue to do this year. And so I just really, I'm thankful for all of the people I've met along the way here, you know, everybody who comments to let me know what they're working on, what they're up to, you know, when I've asked for feedback and you've given me that feedback. I feel like you guys are so great, and I've met so many great people through this, and it's just so rewarding, and I just love this community so much. And it's just extra fun to think about this at the end of the year and the start of the new year. And I'm just really grateful for all of this and for all of you. So thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. And if you would like to get in touch with me, I am meeshyfrazz on Instagram and Ravelry. You can email me at meeshyfrazz@gmail.com, and you can find me at my blog, which is meeshyfrazzknits.com. Have a great new year, have a great holiday, and I will chat with you next time. Bye.